Hello. One of my colleagues sent me this Tableau package, and I thought the interesting thing about this Tableau package is that she did a good job of doing some visual analytics. And by that, I mean she created two charts, the top and bottom charts, air quality index and pollution levels. And I guess she has a lot of filters. I don't know all the details here, but it looks like she's measuring the United States, so maybe it's in metric tons or a trillion tons. And she's got this data going through it, and what's interesting is as she has the data, you see that we have high levels of pollution and we have lower levels of air quality index. So I think that's kind of interesting the way she has this. And you see as pollution decreases, air quality increases. Well, that kind of makes sense, right? And it's kind of inverse. It's like a little oval here, a little inverse oval, which is kind of what you would expect. Although it's kind of weird, right? Because there's wild volatility here on the far right side of this in 2013 and January 14. But still, you see this jagged nature of air quality. But still, the interesting part is you saw definitely pollution decreases, air quality increases. Can you imagine now when we get newer data sets analyzing 2020 data and the effects of COVID when we were in lockdown, what that might look like? We'll have to analyze that data. It should be pretty interesting. But let's just focus on this. I want to focus on the advanced statistical analysis of built in within Tableau. I'm not talking about the functions, just menu items using the graphical user interface to do things. So if you switch over here, you see there's data, and that shows all the tables and fields and everything, and different kind of things available. And she's got a lot of things going on here. And I don't know all the details, I didn't put this together, but if you switch over to analytics, you'll notice in these palettes, we get a certain amount of features. We have summary type analysis available to us, modeling type analysis available to us, custom type analysis. And sometimes when you're trying to do this, if you're a statistical expert and you're going through some of this, you might want a specific tool, maybe even add in the Tableau to do advanced statistical analysis. But by far, I am not a statistical expert on this, but what I will try to do is just show you the built-in functionality that you can start enabling yourself, maybe as a citizen scientist. That's what we like to call people who don't have advanced statistical degrees but are trying to learn and trying to understand. There's no reason why we can't see trend lines. I mean, how would you draw it manually? Trend line would just be like this or like that. The trend line would be a straight line, arithmetic mean. Let's see what they got. A constant line. So it comes out of the box. Let's see what the constant line comes back. I guess it does an arithmetic mean. And we can see the different, navigate these different days. Interesting. Okay. So mean. Not too telling. So let's hit the undo button. Oh, that was nice. An average line. You can play with each one. So the average line, you might, well, split the average. There's the average. Okay. So anytime somebody says on average, you can say on average, air quality is good. God, it just kind of forgets everything above and below the line, right? So on average, it's like if your one hand is sitting in a frozen environment, one sitting on a frying pan, on average, you're perfect, but you wouldn't want to be burnt or frozen, right, on either side of that. So you can see that's kind of scary. Let's get rid of that. I don't know if that's that telling, but it's all right. So average has got a benefit. Let's note that. Then median with quartiles. I'm not sure if this will put it in. Ooh, let's try this with table. So not every functionality, by the way, is going to fit perfectly. This created the upper quartile. You see, you can hover over and see things. Lower quartile. Interesting. All right. It was somewhat good. It's the bulk of it. I don't know if I really like that. Once we look at the band size on this, we're quite large. Let's undo that one, but interesting nonetheless. Median quartiles. Huh. Let me come back to that. I'm just taking notes. So that was interesting. Box plots. Showing one option here. Oh, okay. Well, this one takes the stretch of it. It understands you the upper whisker, the upper hinge, the median, the lower hinge, the lower whisker. So if you're doing statistical analysis and you wanted to put this to your chart, it's a quick way to get a nice box plot. I thought that was quite useful, actually. You can put everything into a good frame there to know what's going on. It certainly gives you an idea of the banding. It really, yeah, it's quite useful information, actually. Okay, that has some use. Then let's go to the model building. Average with 95% confidence interval. Let's check it this way. I didn't really like that. It's not really, we already saw the average versus the line. The confidence interval is so tight because we can fit over the data. That's just the average. It's just going off the average. So the average is not moving. So that's not really, we didn't really care much for that earlier. So let's forget that. Let's take a look at the median with 95% confidence interval and see. Hopefully this gets us a better, not very much, the median, but in that regard. So it's kind of not so telling. For the lower section, it's a little bit broader. You see the confidence intervals are expanding, but still with the average, you can see it's just not working. At least I don't think it's working. Then let's try a trend line. Okay, maybe this will get something in here. Let's try a linear trend line. This is the one we've all learned and worked with. So linear, all right, this is a little more interesting than the average. The trend line shows it going slightly down. It shows you a p-value that's statistically significant. I will say this though, that R squared looks abysmal at 0.04. You know, for low quality R squares, there are table statistical books you can look at, but you can get some R squared, but I wouldn't really start counting these until you get over, of course, quote the statisticians, but I like to look at them at 0.3 and above, because at least you have some influence, or that R squared is important. Let's take a look at the bottom one. Oh, that R squared is even worse, and the p-value is not significant. This is not very good. So that's just the data, at least this method in that regard. Let's go, oh, not forecast, we're on trend lines. Let's try exponential. Okay, more interesting. Still not very significant. Trend line. Polynomial. Oh, wow, look at that. Well, let's take a moment to look at this and just stare at this for a second. It gives you a lot of information here. The R squared is 0.7. Okay, that's pretty high. It's definitely showing some significance. Its p-value shows significance, so it's statistically significant. So this is pretty good. This is a well-fit model. So you can't just forecast, we throw a mean in there and just do that. You gotta really look at these and then use the statistics, your R squared number, your p-values, make sure they're good. That p-value is very good. So this is good. You can see, just take a look at it. Visually, it fits the line here. And you can certainly see that the forecasting is, and you can see where things are going. This one is definitely, certainly trending downward. It wasn't so clear, it was just looking at the graphs. Certainly the straight line mean didn't do it, but this is definitely showing a downward trend on air quality. It means we're losing air quality. And it shows an upward trend on pollution. So we're having bad air quality mainly because pollution is rising. So it does show this correlation. That was pretty interesting. I like that. That was good. Let me undo this. That was interesting. Trend line again. That was polynomial. Oh, we can't get the power. Okay, so let's forget that. We covered them all. Let's go to forecast. Forecast. Ooh, that's exciting. Oh, voila, it shifted it over. The forecasted out period showed what it might be going outward in that regard. It shows actual estimate with the 95% confidence intervals. Okay, that was interesting. Out of the box forecasting. So if you're trying to do a period forecast, if you're doing some financial analysis or sales trending, that might be useful. In this case, pollution shows where we're going. Interesting. And not so bad for something just comes right out of the box. There are more advanced statistical measures to do better, but for a citizen scientist, just to get a general idea, so far I like that polynomial and I like that forecast capability. I thought those were quite good. Cluster analysis, not sure if this will fit here. Yeah, actually I didn't think so. I didn't really add a lot of meaning to this. They're showing the clusters. Maybe our statistical friends can analyze that for us. Now there are custom reference lines. Let's see these. There's table, pane and cell. Let's start with table. Always go like this. Oh, and you can jump over and you can see how they go. You see it's adding minimum per cell, entire table, per pane. If you would split it per pane. I'm just taking a look at the differences here. Okay, the line value to minimum. Tooltip automatically. Yeah, the tooltips are automatically. I don't think the band, it just shows the whole band of the whole table. That's not that useful. Discard. Label computation. You can customize that. So interesting. It just shows the average. I don't know if I really got a lot out of that. But you can kind of play with it a little bit to see which statistical method fits. And then, of course, you need to analyze it to know what you're talking about. Okay, it took me a while to get out of there. Reference band, distribution band. We actually did all three of those. And there's a box plot here. I didn't play with that yet. Let's see. So this one is interesting. It did a box plot. And it did it. Risk of extend within 1.5 the IQR, which is good. Hide underlying markers of outliers. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Except outliers. No outliers. Okay, I kind of like that. It makes sense. Interesting. Bandit. Yeah. Distribution. So was that telling a box plot? Interesting, it doesn't do that on the bottom one. Maximum extended data. Huh. Which is an interesting one. We got to play with it a little bit and see how it works. I think there's more statistical analysis here. You have to really break down what these things mean. Per cell, per pane. Yeah. So it's interesting. So looking at this, let's think what we learned here is going through these analysis. I just had to stare at some of these. I did like some of these values. I got the ability to customize them was interesting. It wasn't all that ominous to do it. So let's back out to the original chart. Of course, I was going too crazy there, clicking every button in sight. Don't be afraid. So like one of the things is you can play with these things in visual analytics is don't be afraid to go through it. And couldn't get all these out of here. Okay, we're back to the original chart. I just hit the undo. I wasn't really trying to edit it out of that. I was just going through an undo exercise. So what I did like about this was I did like the trend line. I did like the polynomial trend line because it seemed to have the most meaningful. Then I think a forecast is really important. We could put the forecast in there. I thought that's a pretty telling graph. So now we have a chart that's a little interesting. You know, certainly the trend line, look at that. It's interesting in that regard. But what's most important here is polynomial. It's statistical relevant. It's good. You have to study exactly what that means if you don't know what it means, but it certainly has a good R squared and good p-value. We're sitting here, I don't know about the value of this forecast, but it's interesting that this line is still within the forecast 95% confidence interval. However, this doesn't have a p-value, which is bad in that regard. So know that you need those statistical relevances. And in this case, that p-value is really awful as well. So you can do it, just know what you're looking at. So the 95% confidence interval was not really all that good. The exponential piece of it was more interesting. The polynomial piece of it was because it actually followed along. Of course, the statistician would probably weigh into it, but if I looked at both these charts, I think I came out with the one method that shows the best way of doing it, and that polynomial approach. So you got a lot of analysis. It wasn't clear right away which way we should do things, but you know, I love the fact that this works, and we get valid statistics coming out of this, and it was out of the box. So with some level of statistical analysis, go look to what's generally accepted if you're not a statistician, say, what should my p-values be? And that's a very good p-value, and that r-squared value is really great. To go through that and compare the different methods. Because some of those methods don't work for this analysis. But with a little bit of analysis here and a little bit of playing with the data, exploring the data, Tableau did a great job at putting together multiple options and being able to put this together. I hope you enjoyed this learning video. The whole thing is not to be afraid. Check through the different ones, analyze the data. As you see, all I was really doing was dragging over the information from the left-hand panes to the actual centered analysis and then doing different views of it. And I was able to generate quite a bit of information. And I think I had some meaningful information in that regard. I never liked those average lines. So that was interesting. I did like the composite intervals weren't really good. If you put the average in, yeah, the average, right? The hot and cold dilemma. The average is more telling than the forecast in that regard. But it is interesting. Okay, thank you. That concludes this